This week, the comedian Dave Chappelle became the latest person to be confronted on stage when he was attacked by a man whilst performing at the Hollywood Bowl. Chappelle has been criticised for jokes about trans people in a recent stand-up show. That was Sticks and Stones. You might have seen it on Netflix. At this year's Academy Awards, Chris Rock was slapped by Will Smith after he made a comment about Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. So, Leo, have you ever been attacked on stage? You should have been.
I haven't been attacked on stage, but I've had to get off the stage to attack someone to get them out of the audience.
Oh, really?
Because I do the free fringe in Edinburgh, so you don't have security or anything.
No,
so you've got to be your own bouncer.
It's scary. My first ever gig at the Edinburgh Fringe was a free fringe gig, and we had 10-odd football fans, Sunderland fans, drunk. Sort of come in. There's no bouncer on the door or anything like that.
I hope they weren't chanting anything problematic.
They were actually chanting homophobic slurs at me, and then one of them vomited in a pint glass. And the thing is, when you're in that situation, you've got the mic, you weirdly feel a bit invincible. So I was sort of flirting with them, and that was making them more angry. And they didn't kill me there, but they could have done, couldn't they? They could have just come up and there is a vulnerability, isn't there, about being on stage?
Yeah, absolutely, and it does happen. It seems to be increasing as well.
Yeah.
Not just attacks, but people voicing their opinions or trying to grab the microphone. I don't know, coming out of lockdown, people didn't seem to be able to hold their booze at all. Yeah. And also there's people misinterpret or misunderstand. I've seen it happen to Nico Yearwood, Jeff Innocent, who does fantastic material about how so he's in a mixed race family. He's the only white guy in his family. His wife is black and his kids are mixed race.
Yes.
So he does all these really funny jokes about how he can't chase his wife down the street or it looks racist and whatever.
Yeah.
But somebody misunderstood what he was saying and thought he was actually being racist.
So this is interesting, isn't it, Stephen? Because I think that there should be that level of trust in the performer, as in if you hear them talking about sensitive issues like race or sexuality or whatever, the first assumption should be they're not being racist or homophobic, they're doing something comedic with this, right?
Well, actually, and it's going to sound weird for me to say this, but even if it was racist or homophobic, let them say it and get to the end and decide whether you think it was afterwards, but see if there was a motivation behind that. And if you're not happy with it, I would recommend not getting up on stage and punching them.
Well, sure, exactly.
And by the way, you probably thought on the basis of Leo's more bombastic style than me that I would not be the party to this. I've actually been attacked on stage.
Really?
Yeah, and I've been punched in the face. If you put Stephen Grant punched heckler into Google, you will find the fact that not only was I attacked when I stepped off stage at a venue in Brighton once, but Steve Coogan ran after the guy who punched me. And then afterwards,
wow.
the Sun ran with Coogan's Run, which was, I thought was lovely.
So was this relatively recently?
No, I mean, this is talking about sort of 15, 16 years ago.
Why did this happen, though?
I did a joke about American people, and I think this guy was either had an American friend or was American or something.
At least he wasn't armed, because most of them are.
And that's the beautiful thing about when they arrive in this country, we tend to take their weapons off them, don't we? So, whether we actually then give it back to them on their return journey, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, it's an absolute must that performers are allowed to do what they do. It's the 1948 Geneva Convention on Human Rights. As a performer, we're actually allowed to say whatever we like.
Well, particularly comedians. Comedians have always historically been the ones that can say the unsayable, or at least the things that you're not, like Lear's fool. You say the thing that anyone else would get executed by the king for. Yeah. The court jester can do it. Because that's the point. That's sort of the role, isn't it?
Yeah, and also it's because it's under the context is one of making a joke. I know it sounds strange because it's almost a bit like saying, well, in that case, then if you say something wildly offensive and it's not funny,
yes,
then in that case it is a borderline hate crime because you have said something motivated entirely by a perspective of like punching down or hatred or something like that. But of course, the ability to know whether something's funny or not is entirely subjective. In fact, there's no other art form more subjective, I think, than comedy anyway. So I'm very much of the opinion that the examples you gave was great. Jeff Innocent's a great one as well. But comics are good at doing that kind of. You think it's going to be completely out of order, and then it's not.
Exactly.
And I do jokes about the fact that that I'm trying to make out that I'm a good person, saying I would never be unfaithful. I can't even sort of pleasure myself without feeling like I'm being unfaithful to whoever I'm with. I have to spend the 10 minutes before it imagining she's died, and I mean it's incredibly dark. But the first part of the joke makes out I'm a good person. Second part makes out I'm a monster.
Sure.
It's the whole idea behind it is a joke. If you thought that was literally what I'm like, then you shouldn't be at a comedy show. And if you're upset by it, the very last thing you should do is get up on the stage and punch me in the face.
Yeah. So you say, Leo, that this is happening more and more. Do you think the Will Smith slapping incident has made this more likely to happen again?
I think it's very likely that was the sort of impetus and spur behind the Chappelle attack,
right?
Because it was only like a week or two afterwards, and you know, pretty similar attack. Although the attacker went on stage with I think it was a gun.
It was a knife disguised as a gun.
It was a knife disguised as a gun.
If you're going to disguise a knife as anything, like you're not gonna. It's not like a gun is.
No, if you're gonna have a weapon, disguise it as like a teddy bear, or something like that. Don't disguise it as an even more extreme weapon.
Then he got on stage and didn't even use it. He just rugby tackled him. So he'd be terrible in a war zone. I think he'd just take his shoes off and throw them at the enemy. But
yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Like when you see someone high profile like Will Smith doing that at the Oscars, and he doesn't even get asked to leave, let alone arrested.
He was applauded. He was applauded by Hollywood. Stood up and gave him a standing ovation for punching a comedian. I mean, to be fair, comedians at the Oscars tend to come on and make fun of all the rich actors sitting out there. So then the rich actors get a chance to applaud somebody who's enacted their revenge.
Yes.
But yeah, the entitlement in audiences now. I mean, I had somebody come to my show. Well, they wrote a letter of complaint, an email of complaint to one of the comedy clubs I do a solo show at every month or so. And they said, we came to see this show in July and it was horrific and offensive. And we came back to see Leo again in October and he was still horrific and offensive. Can you please stop putting him on? And people don't understand that not everything is made specifically for them.
No, but that's it. I mean, the idea that I would go to a comedy club and assume that I could never hear anything that might have a particular sensitivity for me. I mean, how narcissistic, frankly, is that? It's ridiculous.